Man, we've got some pretty wild stuff to talk about with the Raiders today. You're not going to believe this, but it's like deja vu from last year. Remember that team meeting where players just let loose about Josh McDaniels? Yeah, that meeting that led to Antonio Pierce stepping up and McDaniels hitting the road the next day? Well, history's got a funny way of repeating itself. Let me dive into this CBS Sports report because, wow, it's pretty eye-opening. Oh, quick thing, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, okay? We're all about AFC West news on this channel, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. So check this out. The Raiders just made some massive changes this past week. They straight up fired Luke Getsy, their offensive coordinator, and a bunch of other offensive staff right after that Bengals loss. Antonio Pierce didn't waste time, you know? He brings in Scott Turner as interim offensive coordinator, moves Joe Philbin to offensive line coach, and, get this, brings in Norv Turner as an advisor. Yeah, that's Scott's dad, if you didn't know. But here's where it gets really interesting. Monday rolls around and they have this players and staff meeting. And let me tell you, this wasn't your typical how's everyone doing kind of meeting. Players they laid it all out there. We're talking frustrations about schedules, time management, basically saying there's zero structure, discipline, or accountability across the board. Now, they're heading into their bye week and maybe, just maybe, this whole vent session could set them up for a stronger second half. Just like last year, right? And when guys like Max Crosby are speaking up, saying operations aren't where they need to be, that's huge. Here's the real deal with what's going on inside the Raiders right now. The scheduling, it's a mess. Efficiency, not there. Players are straight up saying they're wasting time on stuff that doesn't matter. And this accountability issue, it's hitting both players and coaches hard. You know what really stood out in this meeting? The whole accountability thing. Leans in, let me break down the Raiders' coaching journey for you. They've had Jack Del Rio, super strict, no-nonsense guy. Then Gruden shows up, bringing this mix of fun and intensity, like he was serious about the work but knew how to keep things loose. Then McDaniels comes in and Shake's head goes full drill sergeant. And surprise, surprise. Players weren't exactly fans of that approach. We'd been hearing for a while that players just weren't vibing with his style. So when McDaniels gets fired and Pierce steps in, complete 180. Players are having fun again, smoking cigars, playing basketball in the locker room, totally different energy. But here's the thing. Maybe the pendulum swung too far the other way. 'Cause now we're hearing accountability's gone out the window. And look, I get it. Pierce is a first-year head coach. He went from college to NFL linebackers coach to head coach like snaps fingers that. That's a lot to figure out. But what really gets me thinking is the experience level on this coaching staff. We've got guys like Marvin Lewis, Rob Ryan, and Joe Philbin. These aren't rookies, right? So if there's issues with time management and direction, what are these veteran coaches doing? Take Rob Leonard. His job is clear. Develop and fire up that defensive line, and he's crushing it. But with Marvin Lewis and Rob Ryan there, shouldn't we be seeing more organization? Like, shouldn't Rob Ryan be stepping in with specific time-blocked practice schedules? But that's not happening. Look, I'm not trying to point fingers here, but when players need to call a meeting like this, something's off. If players are questioning leadership, that's a red flag. On the offensive side, man, we've been hearing about issues with the offensive coaching staff for weeks. James Craig as offensive line coach, that wasn't working out, and it showed in how players performed. It's not that DJ Claz or Jackson Powers-Johnson are bad players, but some of these decisions, putting Johnson at left guard, moving Cody Whitehair around. Meanwhile, Jordan Meredith's consistently outperforming Cody Whitehair, but these shifts kept happening. I called this in preseason. Your O-line coach needs to see these details. Take Jackson Powers-Johnson, natural center, but they draft him as a guard. Then, just last week, boom, shows everyone he's great at the center. That's what I'm talking about with these decisions. James Craig, he just didn't have the experience. Always an assistant, never a full NFL O-line coach. These things matter. Compare that to Rob Leonard. He's showing exactly how it should be done with the D-line. And Luke Getsy, Shake's head. Players made it pretty clear he wasn't adding value as offensive coordinator. Yeah, Davante Adams publicly supported him, but come on. That felt more like something he had to do. I seriously doubt Adams saw Getsy as a good coach, a guy who struggles with basic concepts like spacing. The Raiders have been wrestling with these problems for a while now. They've tried different approaches, seen various coaches come and go, and yet here we are, still talking about these same issues. Maybe this recent team meeting was the wake-up call they needed to really address what's going on. But the real question is, where do they go from here? Let's be honest, even if they went on an insane winning streak and somehow made a run, winning every game from here on out, that's just not realistic. So the focus right now needs to be on something more sustainable. Figuring out if Antonio Pierce is truly the coach they want to build around long term. These player-coach meetings, they shouldn't even be happening in the first place. It's not normal for players to have to call out basic stuff mid-season, pointing out issues that should have been ironed out long ago. When a team has to gather mid-season just to talk about discipline and structure, that's a red flag. If Pierce can't step up and show he's the right fit, then the Raiders need to consider moving on. Mark Davis has to take a hard look at what makes the winning franchises stand out from the ones that just can't seem to get it together. It's not about holding onto a coach just for the sake of stability. It's about finding someone who brings a balance of structure and flexibility. A coach who can instill discipline but adapt as needed. Look at John Gruden, for example. Given enough time, Gruden was able to build something successful. But with coaches like Josh McDaniels or Luke Getsy, it became obvious pretty quickly that they weren't the right fit. While Pierce shows some promise, there are some serious contenders out there right now. Take Ben Johnson, for instance. He's on the fast track to becoming one of the NFL's top head coaches. Or Jim Harbaugh. No matter where he ends up, you know he's going to bring results. Imagine if Harbaugh landed with the Chargers, a team that's lost key players like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and still manages to stay competitive. That's the power of great coaching. A top-tier coach can elevate a team, even when they're down key players or facing challenges. And honestly, finding the right head coach might be even more important than having a star quarterback. Sure, a great QB can make a huge difference, but you can often find a solid quarterback on the market. A truly great head coach, though? That's rare, and it's essential for any team that wants to build a foundation for long-term success. Take the San Francisco 49ers, for example. They knew they had something special with Jim Harbaugh, even when things got a little rough. Then, when it was clear Chip Kelly wasn't the answer, they didn't waste any time. They saw what Kyle Shanahan could bring to the table and went for it. That's what smart organizations do. They make those tough calls to get the right coach and set their team up for success. And it's not just them. Look at the Rams and the Dolphins. They were in rough spots too, struggling to find their footing. But they turned things around by making smart hires, getting the right people in charge. That's the kind of move the Raiders need to make right now. There are some solid options out there, Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, to name a couple. But the Raiders can't afford to wait around. They either need to fully back Pierce or make a bold move and bring in one of these top-tier guys who can really shake things up. For the Raiders, look, they've got some big decisions coming up. But I think they'll figure it out, hopefully land a solid quarterback in the draft, get the right head coach, whether that's Johnson, Slowick, or if Pierce proves himself, they could turn this whole thing around. Okay guys, what do you guys think? Is Antonio Pierce the right coach for the Raiders, or should they be looking for someone with more experience? And do you think the Raiders' issues can really be fixed with a new coach, or is there something deeper going on within the organization? And most importantly, if the Raiders go on a winning streak, do you think that should guarantee Antonio Pierce a longer-term role, or would you still want to explore other options? And thanks for hanging out with me on this one. If you liked what you heard, you know what to do. That thumbs up button is right there. And, I'll catch you guys in the next one with more updates.